If your association AMS has a website feature, you've probably wondered to yourself, particularly when you're transitioning, do I really need my own website? Do I need to build my own website? Or why can't I just use the AMS's website feature? And a lot of times, actually, the AMS companies are in your ear telling you, you don't need your own website. You can use this. It works just as well. So my good friend Becky Breeden and I are here, and we're going to chat about that today. My name is Erica Dickstein. I am with Spring Insight.
My name is Becky Breeden. I'm a fractional CIO with Strategico Consultants, and I've spent a lot of my association career helping organizations transform their web presence. So it's great to talk to you, Erica.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to chat with you today. So let's start out. When does it make sense to use the AMS website as opposed to building your own?
First, I want to just set the level that most association management software web capabilities are designed to impact how the transactional elements that write directly to the AMS function and look. So if your organization is fully transactional, if you have very little relationship with your customers outside of their transactional interactions with you, then it might make sense for you to leverage the content management capabilities of your AMS. But if you have needs beyond those transactions, and most associations do, then you need to look beyond the AMS. Great examples are if you are trying to cultivate membership and cultivate engagement, if you're trying to provide a knowledge center for your members, if you're trying to create a networking and engaging website for your users, then you need to go beyond the AMS website capabilities.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of looking at it. And I think often about, whenever you have any software, right? Any software that you have, as organizationally, we spend a lot of time, what can we simplify? What can we use to do more than one thing? And I think whenever you make that decision, what you have to think about is, what is this built for and what does it do super well? So leading on to that, knowing that both of us do recommend going with a standalone site, but let's talk about if you decide to go with the AMS website, what are associations giving up when they rely on the AMS website, particularly, I'm thinking about flex branding and analytics. Like what are those things that you should be thinking through when you make that decision?
I do agree with you that primarily it's flexibility and it's also scalability. The ability for you to do new things and provide new value to your customers online because you're working within the confines of what is focused on association data management versus content and interaction and engagement. A lot of these systems do not have great capabilities around analytics and experience tracking. They don't have the opportunity to really enhance usability with things like workflows and different types of interactions where users can choose how they engage with content. They're very sort of standard and have a sort of single way for users to engage.
Yeah, that absolutely. I'm co-signing everything you just said and adding on to it. The way that I tend to think of it, it's very similar in the way that I think about we obviously we're a WordPress shop, and whenever I talk to somebody who is in a proprietary CMS, one of the things that I say, there's reasons that you do it, there's reasons that you don't, but one of the things that I regularly will say is you do have to understand that you are adopting their roadmap in terms of development. So if you're, we at Spring Insight have been talking a lot about generative AI optimization and sort of what are the things that you need to do to your website. Well, you may or may not be able to do, something like that. That's just an example of the kind of technology. But you may or may not be able to do any sort of recommended features, any sort of recommended functions, because it's based on, well, has the AMS built that technology? Is that something that they are prioritizing? They might be prioritizing something very different, in which case, it's not just as simple as talking to a development team, hiring somebody because you're working in their code.
Mm-hmm. I would say, just to add on to something that you said, that generative AI piece raised for me another thought, and that is that a couple of the most frequent complaints that we hear when someone is talking about their website and what they need, I can't find anything, and our search is terrible.
Yes.
Those are two of the things that you're definitely not going to optimize with association management, content management.
I think that's absolutely true, particularly with associations, because if we know one thing about associations, it's that they produce value add content at a rate that most organizations
Mm-hmm.
just simply don't. It's just,
High
I mean,
volume. Mm-hmm.
it is. I mean, this is just a fact, right? Because that's their job. Their job is to keep members informed of what's happening in their specific industry, in their specific segment, et cetera, right? So they produce that kind of content. And sometimes it's available only to members, sometimes it's available to the outside, but regardless of how they utilize this content, what's something that's essential is for it to be findable on the website, displayable, findable,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. So having a website that has been, typically it's custom created, by the way, and it's not even just that associations need to be able to do this. It's this association produces this kind of content and needs to optimize the user experience to be able to display it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even things like usability, accessibility, those are
Mm,
not usually the high functioning components of an AMS content management system. Their role is to focus on the data and the relational data. And
right.
that's not the innate intent of a content management system or
Boy,
website.
and it's interesting because we're having this whole conversation, Becky, and we have stayed away from the sort of the graphical elements. Can you make it look like
Mhm.
you want to make it look like? And we've also stayed away from the ease of use in terms of, from the management perspective. Does it have, the is it built to be able to have the ease of use that modern day page building software has, so that you can build modules, so that you are very easily able to sort of update and customize your website very quickly, because it's just not created for that.
And in general, the opposite is true because in an association management system, the goal is to allow the user just enough flexibility to work around the core data that's being presented or interacted with, and not the ability to leverage those change components on every single page in every area of the page.
Yeah,
You're really
that
trying to limit the user to these fringe capabilities.
right. No, that's a great point. I mean, it is built, it is built to prevent you from breaking it, but
Right.
that does mean you are handcuffed in a way. I mean, and I would also say, we're continuing this. I think this is just a really meaty question, and there's lots of pieces to it. One of the things that I often say about, again, we work in WordPress, and for better or for worse, in terms of, for me as a development firm, I work in WordPress. If you drive down the street, sometimes you can find somebody with a sign up that says, we'll help you with your WordPress site. There are endless numbers of people who have expertise working in pretty much any of the open source, but certainly WordPress. So if you do run into something, if you need to get something updated, if you have just a brilliant idea of, I'd like this to be displayed, you have so much flexibility in being able to find a good partner. And that's another thing with the AMS, is now, you you really are hamstrung in terms of who your contacts are. In an ideal world, we love our AMS partners, and some of them are really amazing, but sometimes it's it's very difficult, and it's not just a functionality thing, it's being able to be on their schedule.
There have been association management companies over our softwares over time who have leveraged tools like WordPress or Sitefinity or other
Mm-hmm.
content management systems to create those experience layers and to produce a better content oriented website. The thing to watch out for in those circumstances, though, is what that company has done to that software so that they can manipulate it. So, an example would be, did they create a custom theme in WordPress that only they can work in, that only they can manipulate? Or is there a hard limitation to how you upgrade one of those platforms when you're working within that association management software company's version of that tool?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I keep coming back to the comparison with proprietary software because I think it's very apt in this situation. You think about, as you said, you're tied to what they've created, but then in addition to that, you're also have to think about you are building on somebody else's land. If for whatever reason an AMS is ceases to exist, which does happen,
Mm-hmm.
well, then what happens in the case of a an open source website, right? I mean, you are going to be impacted if you are their client, no matter what, because now you're going to have to replace that AMS piece. But if your website is there too, that creates this other sort of secondary problem that really can put an association in a bind over a short period of time.
It does. And we do see association management software where they have created enough ability to affect the look and feel that they can push out things like directories and
Mm-hmm.
transactional pages and profiles to improve the experience of those interactions, to make the read and write of data direct so that you don't have to worry so much about integration with a third party content management system. But in those cases, you're still going to get your best user experience and your best engagement from having a third party content management system, whether it's WordPress or something else, that then sits beside the
Right.
AMS online capabilities. And that's actually what we see the majority of time in the association world. We see those components being pushed out that have the look and feel of the organization, and they are directly from the AMS, but there's another content management system sitting beside it, really doing the heavy lifting of content, of engagement, of knowledge creation, and all of that content that you talked about, better search, better navigation.
Right. No, that makes absolutely, because in that case, right, they're just pushing things out to sort of replicate the experience that is native to being in an open source or, that larger environment. So, I mean, we haven't really been talking about cost and complexity
Mhm.
as a factor in this decision, but obviously for associations it is. How does that factor in when an association is making a decision about AMS and whether or not to adopt the website?
Most organizations are still budgeting, at least from my perspective, most organizations are still budgeting in this sort of capital expenditure way where they spend a lot in year one and then very little in the next 5 years, a lot in year, six, and then very little in the next few years. I think that for organizations who want to make sure they're staying ahead of the curve and not really getting into a position where they have to do a total tear it down and rebuild it, budgeting appropriately for both your AMS and for your content management in tandem with each other is the best approach. Cost is going to be a factor, but there are a lot of low cost content management systems out there that can be branded to your look and feel, that have a lot of flexibility for you to continue to scale and to continue to produce the content that your users and your members want, and sit beside that association management system. It's not necessarily to go out and buy or build a very expensive enterprise level content management system site anymore. There are a lot of options for open source or for lower cost.
I think that, yes, absolutely. As always, I completely agree with you. And I would add that as you're thinking about, when, as with any decision, right, when you're making a decision based on cost, when you're making that decision based on, okay, we need to reduce the cost here, you're reducing your ability to expand, right? You're sort of creating those smaller and smaller circles. So I don't think, obviously bringing the bias back in. Digital strategy, that's not the place that you save, is where, the place where most commonly outside of your meetings, right, where you're really actually interacting with your user base, your membership, and your, even more importantly, your potential members.
Especially in a world where generative AI has taken such hold, and we are all going more and more to the internet to look for answers to complex questions in a narrative way. Your website is going to become the link between those answers that are produced through whatever large language model you're using, whether you're using Gemini or whether you're using ChatGPT or Perplexity. Those links to your websites are going to be the thread that binds you to anyone asking the question. So having that investment in the right place is going to be critical.
So, wrapping this up, is there a middle ground between the two? And what is that middle ground?
I think we talked a little bit about this a couple of minutes ago, but the middle ground to me is relying on your association management software platform to give you the flexibility of look and feel to produce those transactional components that live in that platform, your directories, your forms that write back, your member profile, your ability to ask questions of your members and have it write back directly to their record. Those are things that association management software does well. Your ability to produce knowledge content and your ability to create searchable, easily navigable content relies on your content management system. I think that's the ideal scenario, is to rely on those transactional components with some ability to present and affect the look and feel, but really rely on your content management system for that curation of knowledge and engagement.
I think that's exactly right, is having both in a way that are, that in this case, it is typically the website that is built to dovetail with the AMS. But that again goes back to this flexibility thing, right? That's why the website has to conform to the AMS as opposed to vice versa, because the AMS, that's sort of going back to the question about what you're risking. The AMS doesn't conform. The AMS sits there. So having a website that is built that you can navigate in between and retain that same look and feel, that makes total sense. Do you have any other thoughts, Becky, before I wrap us up?
I do not, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about content management. It's been one of my passions for many years. And anytime, Erica, I'm yours.
Becky, this was such a treat. I always love every conversation that I have with you. So for everybody listening, thank you so much for joining. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please subscribe, like the video. Actually, Becky, why don't you sign off and tell people where they can find you and
Sure.
what they would be looking for if they were looking for you?
I'm a fractional CTO with Strategico Consultants. We work with organizations to add strategic insight and direction to their technology needs. We do system selections, system implementations, and a variety of other strategic initiatives, including technology assessments and roadmaps. You can find me on the Strategico website at strategicoconsultants.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, and we will make sure that that link is shared when this video is shared.
Perfect. And Spring Insight, do if you are looking for a website that dovetails beautifully with your AMS that clearly you've had the Strategico consultants help you set up. We can be found at springinsight.com if you would like a consultation, and we'll chat about your needs. Thank you so much.